Welcome to another Coffee with Samso, where we speak with ASX companies and we talk to the guys who drive these stories. We're here at the University Club in Crawley on the campus of the University of Western Australia on a very, very wet day. Welcome Allan Kelly from Miramar Resources Limited.
Thanks, yeah.
The star of Coffee with Samso, record holder. ASX code is M2R. Market cap is 6.78 million. Must be the cheapest one in town, mate.
Yeah, I think our EV is about 4 million, which is, quite amazing given the number of projects that we've got and some of the results that we've got over the last 12 months. I think that's quite amazing, and you see other companies that have got one project and have that sort of EV, and we've got, 6 or something.
Yeah.
It's pretty amazing. So I guess, what that shows is how much upside there is for shareholders if we find something decent,
Speaking of upsides, we've had a lot of discussion about all your projects. Look, Bangemall was something that we talked about. We said, look, here's the thing, and by the time you guys get there, you've let out a few announcements. Fantastic story, I feel. Tell us about it.
Yes, Bangemall's a really interesting one. I guess to step back a bit, the Bangemall Basin is part of what they call the Capricorn Origin. And the Capricorn Origin is a belt of rocks that sits in between the Yilgarn, where the Goldfields are, and the Pilbara. And it's Proterozoic, so it's a younger age. And it's this belt of rocks, of sedimentary units and granites and things. And the Yilgarn and the Pilbara has done this a few times, and when it's opened up, it's formed a basin, and when it's closed up again, it's sort of all folded, and there's a lot of big faults which make a really good plumbing system. So it's been a pretty neglected area for a long time. There was up to only a few years ago, there was really only one major discovery there, and that's the Abra lead zinc deposit, but that's been around for like 30 odd years. So there hasn't been a lot of work there. I did a little bit of work up there with Western Mining in the 90s, and our Whaleshark project sits off the end of that, but undercover. But the actual outcropping bits of the Capricorn Origin are really underexplored. And so what got me sort of re-interested in that area was when Geoscience Australia put out this Ni-Cu-PGE atlas in 2016. And it's what led Chalice into the southwest to make the nickel discovery at Julimar. And I had this idea about the Bangemall area because there's all these dolerite sills, intrusive units within the basin. And they're the same age as what you see at the West Musgraves, where the Nebo and Babel discoveries were. And you've also got these big faults, these big crustal scale faults that are like the plumbing system for fluid that could come up. So I had this idea that the Bangemall could be an area that was, very interesting for nickel-copper-PGEs. And there were some regional indicators. There was regional geochem anomalism. There were these sills, these big structures. So 2019, I sort of did a real big desktop study of the Bangemall and said, okay, what are the areas that are most prospective for nickel-copper-PGEs, and pegged some tenements. And at the time, there was no one else there. It was basically vacant ground. There was a few tenements held by guys that had been looking for manganese, but they weren't sort of very active anymore. I think Galena Mining might have just sort of taken over Abra and started doing some work there, but we could have had whatever we wanted.
We're talking about one end of the Gascoyne to the other end, right?
Yeah, so you took your way in the east. The Capricorn Origin goes way over past the Great Northern Highway, past to Newman, pretty much over to where Capricorn are, and then it goes right over to the coast where we are at Onslow. So it's this massive big belt of rocks, and there's some bits of it that are granitic rocks, the actual Gascoyne province, where people like Dreadnought and that are. And then there's a couple of basins. There's what they call the Edmund Basin, and then there's the Collier Basin on top of that, and then next to that is the Ashburton Basin. But that's actually part of the older sequence. That's part of the Pilbara sort of stuff. So it's really that sort of Gascoyne province, Edmund Basin, Collier Basin. That was the area that I was interested in. And like I say, so after we pegged the ground in 2019, suddenly we're like completely surrounded. First Quantum were up there, Tech were up there, Dreadnought picked up a whole heap of ground, and a whole heap of other people. So suddenly it was like, oh wow, like what's going on here? You know, there's so many people, and obviously what's driven that, I guess probably in the last 18 months or so, is, you know, Hastings are developing their rare earth project at Yangibana, which has been around for a long time, but it was actually originally called Gifford Creek, I think. It's been known about. I actually went and looked at some uranium rare earth things when I was working for Western Mining up in that Gascoyne province as well, back in the 90s. But people like Dreadnought picking up that ground around Hastings and then making some new carbonatite discoveries. And now you've got Lanthanine, who are sort of each end of Hastings making discoveries, and then there's a few other people picked up ground. And so we started going, well, it looks like aside from this Ni-Cu-PGE potential, there could be some other stuff on the Edmund Basin tenements as well. So we flew a magnetic and radiometric survey at one of our projects that we call Dooley Downs. It's about 30 kilometres north of Mount Augustus. We just flew detailed mags and radiometrics, and when we got the radiometrics back, in an area that's supposed to be just all like folded sediments, suddenly there's like these big blobs of uranium and thorium anomalies. And you go, hang on, why? What's going on there? Something a bit different there. And then when you look at the magnetics as well, those uranium and thorium anomalies are coincident with like a magnetic low. And if you look at any of the stuff that Dreadnought's been putting out, you get these magnetic lows with like a little mag-high rim around it, and that's very indicative of carbonatite. So we were starting to go, hang on, this is a bit strange, because to date, all the carbonatites have been found in that Gascoyne province with all the granites. So for us, if we find something like that in the Edmund Basin or in the Collier Basin, then that's pretty significant. It opens up like a whole nother area. And the ages are right. The Edmund Basin, I think, is sort of like 1500 million years old, and the Collier Basin's a bit younger, 1100, 1000, million years old. The carbonatite's quite young, so the timing is right. They could be intruding into the Edmund Basin and the Collier Basin as well. So that's interesting. So we went out on the ground last week. I went to a couple of the best looking anomalies. One of them is really interesting. It's a very large anomaly that we put out in our presentation. It's like 5 k's long by about a k wide, and it's all mapped as sediment, but in the mags it looks like an intrusion. And on the ground it's actually a hill. It's like a folded hill of sediment, and then there's a bit of drainage in the middle, so like the hill's sort of been broken like that. So we went down and had a look inside, but it's all just like alluvium stuff. But that's where it looks like there could be like an intrusion that has caused the fold almost. So it's sitting underneath it. So that's pretty interesting. And then another area where there's a really strong uranium-thorium anomaly with a bit of a circular mag low. We went out there, and it was just sort of like sheet wash and stuff. But there was lots of ironstone, lots of real heavy dark ironstone. So we took a few samples of that and put them into the lab and see what sort of numbers we get from those. We also took a scintillometer, nice, real modern scintillometer, and you could just walk across the ground. It would start like giving you like high uranium numbers. So we're sort of in the right spot. So
like a gig, like those things you see in the movies when they walk towards a uranium.
Yeah, exactly. It's a scintillometer, right? So what we're going to do probably next year, maybe when it cools down a bit up there, I think about doing ground mags to home in on those sort of mag anomalies a bit more.
Yeah.
And probably with a scintillometer at the same time.
Yeah.
Just walk. The scintillometers now these days are great. They've got GPS and it'll track it. So you just set it on record like you do with a magnetometer, and just walk.
Okay.
And then at the end of the day download it, and then suddenly you've got a map of like potassium, thorium, uranium or whatever. So yeah, that's probably what we'll do there. And then not too much cover there, so we might be able to even get like a little auger rig or something out there and see if we can punch through the material and see what's underneath it. So, but
not much cover there.
No, it's mostly outcrop. That's the
Outcropping.
thing. It's outcropping. So a lot of the sort of real simple stuff like stream seeds and soils should work pretty well up there. And you can see a lot of the geology. When you're driving from Mount Augustus out to Dooley Downs, there's this, range of hills, and you can see all the units. You can see sediments and then a dolerite like this in the hill, So,
When you're talking about the anomalies, the uranium-thorium anomalies and things like that, without getting too technical, can you just give us 101 on why it is or what it means, I guess?
yeah, so I guess a lot of these carbonatites, these rare earth carbonatites, they have a whole swag of minerals. So, there's 20 rare earth elements, right? But you also get accessory sort of elements, so and things like titanium and phosphorus, and you get uranium and thorium. So you're not actually looking for the uranium or the thorium, but they're like with the rare earths. So it's pretty well understood that most carbonatites have some sort of like radiometric signature, and generally it tends to be thorium or uranium, not so much potassium. So that's the great thing, is that's a real quick and easy way to focus in on an area, because there's really good regional radiometric data across the whole of WA, and especially not so good in, say, the Yilgarn, where you've got a bit of cover, but in somewhere like the Capricorn Origin or maybe the Kimberley, where there's a lot of outcrop. A quick look at a radiometric data set, you just go, oh yeah, there, bang, 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 and you can see a lot of stuff because it's outcrop.
You guys are chasing carbonatites. We're not talking about clays here. We're talking about hard rock rare earths. When we look at the Gascoyne, Ashburton basin, I see that you got this this diagram or figure in your presentation that has that there. I mean, do you see that as something like? I mean, you mentioned that not long ago there was no one there, and I remember 10 years ago, almost nobody wanted to be there in some ways.
Yep.
Do you think that the geology, the mineral system potentially that's there, the cooking system that has not been looked at, understood, misunderstood, whichever one it is, do you think this is going to be like the eye-opener? Are we moving into an era where this is now the Eastern Goldfields of that part?
I don't know if it's the Eastern Goldfields, but it's definitely getting more interest. I think it was starting in about 2013, so about almost 10 years ago, the GL Survey of WA and Geoscience Australia did a big study on the Capricorn origins, and they did things like seismic lines to check out where those main big fault plumbing systems were. They already had regional stream geochemistry. They flew the huge big EM survey over the whole Capricorn origin. It took them a few years and it cost them a lot of money. But it was deliberately designed to go, hey, this is a block of WA that's really underexplored. And if you go on the GSWA website, there's a whole series of PowerPoint presentations from when they had this big seminar on it. And one of the first slides, you got the Pilbara with all these deposits and the Yilgarn with all these deposits, and there's just nothing in the middle. And they're going, how's this so? When you've got all these ingredients, you've got these big plumbing systems, you've got all this fluid. There's this thing called they call it the Warrakurna Large Igneous Province, and this is the thing that basically formed the West Musgrave deposits, probably Abra, even things like Nova and stuff. It's like this big Proterozoic event that just introduced all this magma and stuff into these areas. So, and the Capricorn origins has been, part of that system. So, it's been underexplored, but I reckon it's got a lot of potential for a lot of different deposit types. Like you're talking about, the Abra style stuff, Bella Vista is looking for that sort of stuff. near our Mount Vernon project. You've got all the manganese that people have known about for a long time. There's even a bit of gold, but that's more up on the Ashburton side, Mount Olympus and Paulsons and stuff. But the nickel potential hasn't been realised really till now. Dreadnought have made that discovery at Mangaroon. That's a little bit different again because there's basically three ages of mafic rocks. There's the Narrabunna dikes, which are like 1450 million. There's the Calcathara, which is the real interesting ones. They're the ones like West Musgraves. And then there's these other ones called the Mundine Well Suite, and they sort of go like this. So when you look at Dreadnought stuff, they've got this big dike they call the Money Intrusion, where the Mangaroon stuff is, and that's part of this later one. So it's just like, it's really early stages out there. So,
because to me, when I look at what's happening there, what people are finding, the different types of commodities that they're finding, it almost feel like there's a big cooking system that it's not just lead and zinc, it's not just rare earths.
Oh yeah.
What else could be there? And that kind of thinking is a bit like the lithium exploration site, where people are now starting to find stuff in areas where they never thought. The low-hanging fruits.
It's a Proterozoic origin. It's the edge. It's a craton margin mobile belt. So it's like the Gawler Craton, not the Gawler Craton, the Olympic Copper Gold Province in the Gawler Craton. It's like the Eastern Succession in Mount Isa. It's like the Gravillian origin in Canada, where like Voisey Bay and stuff are. You have your real stable Archean things that have been sitting there for 3 billion years, but then you have these bits in between, the Patterson origin, Telfer, Nifty, Javieron.
The Albany Fraser.
It's these bits, these belts that are around the edges of these cratons, where you've had all this movement, so you've had all this opportunity for fluid and stuff to come through. So
it's just like the Kimberley, where Argyle sits on this belt, right?
That Kimberley belt that sort of goes, I can't remember what it's called, but I think it's King Leopold origin. It's that's a mobile belt as well. It's exactly the same.
That's why when you look at, my next question was, how many of these systems are still around? So when the latest one that I've sort of been talking about, obviously I'm sort of involved with projects, is the bit that's in between what people understand as the Olympic belt and the Gawler Craton as is. Like that whole area now, with the age dating we've got, changes people's thinking. So you're on the margin, right? You always talk about these margins.
Yeah.
So that is effectively the margin you've been describing.
Probably the downside of the Capricorn origin is that there's so much outcrop that the view is, if it's there, it must have been found already. Right? So, but not all of it's outcropping, and not all of it's obvious. And some of these things are quite small. Carbonatite might only be 500 metres by 500 metres. That's pretty, that's a needle in a haystack, in a paddock full of haystacks, in a farm full of paddocks, right? That's how I sort of put it. So these things are small, but Whaleshark, the thing about Whaleshark is that yes, it's part of that belt, but it's undercover in the basin, so it doesn't outcrop. And there's the same rocks that are all around Dreadnought and everyone in that sort of Gascoyne province are out at Onslow as well, but they're under 50 to 100 metres of cover. So there's no reason why there couldn't be Carbonatites sitting underneath the Carnarvon Basin at Onslow.
Or something else.
They had to explore it for it, right? So it's all a bit of a... the geology's good, but, what makes that different from that bit?
Yeah.
And how do we decide to go here and not there? So it's an interesting part of the world. We've got... how many projects have we got? We've got 1, 2, 3, 4... We've got effectively five projects in the Bangemall. 2 of them are granted. So we've got Mount Vernon, where we did EM, and we've got all these EM anomalies that we need to follow up for nickel. We've got Dawley Downs, where we've just done this radiometric survey. Pretty much north of that is a thing called Blue Bar. That's still an application, but so how's this for a mix? We think there's nickel-copper PGE potential. There could be rare earth potential. There's a huge uranium anomaly there, and there's a diamondiferous lamproite with 27 microdiamonds in it in one project.
Yeah.
So you go, wow.
I know. I mean, that's why I sort of been focusing on this because, you know, that whole region is ripe for discovery, and we, as you pointed out, you actually don't know what you're going to get. It's like, we talked about having food analogies. It's like walking in the room and smelling something really nice, but you're not quite sure what's in the pot.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that's where everyone's at with that region. Is that a fair comment?
Yeah, well, as I said, we went there looking for one thing. We're looking for nickel copper PGEs. But as we go through the sort of limited amount of historical data there, we realise that there's potential for this, there's potential for this, someone's reported this, and you go, okay. So it's in this market, it's, you know, you can be a bit cynical, and there's a lot of people jumping on the bandwagon and stuff, but I guess there's a trade-off between jumping on the bandwagon or being a nimble junior explorer that can react to an opportunity. And the zinc stuff in the Irrawaddy Basin is a classic example of that too, right? You know, you got greenstone belts and, oh, hang on, there's a bit of zinc here.
Yeah.
And suddenly it's Chinook and all these other discoveries. So, you got to have a plan, but sometimes if you get too focused, you can miss another opportunity, and there's plenty of examples of that, right?
Yeah, I think that's the key, is that, you know, you got to be flexible, and that's the name of our game, right? Today you're looking for A, but B could be the payday.
Classic example of that is Tropicana. So Western Mining went out to that area looking for nickel.
Yeah.
And they got a gold anomaly. And they took it to the gold team and said, hey guys, we've got this gold anomaly. And the gold team went, it's the wrong rocks, and let it go.
Yeah.
Tropicana, right? So you got to be, you got to be careful about being too fixed, but you also just can't do everything.
Yeah.
You can't just do everything. You just go broke.
There's too many analogies. You know, my classic was Gold Road. Two young rocks.
Yeah.
You can't find anything there. Today is 10 million ounces coming out.
Yeah.
Granites in gold. We don't.
Well, Hemi's a classic example. Pilbara.
Yeah.
Pilbara's no good for gold.
Yeah.
Look at Hemi now. Yeah,
I've had many comments. People say, "Oh, Pilbara has heaps of gold, but we can't find where the source is. It's just too hard." You know. Then you got Hemi. Then when you look into it, that's just conversation, because you got Hemi there. You've got Calidus got stuff there. Kairos has got it. You know, there is a lot of gold.
Hemi's a game changer.
Yeah.
Hemi is a real deal. 150 kilometre long greenstone belt. All these intrusives along it. Lots of targets. Lots of good hits. That's a real project. That's a game changer for the Pilbara.
Yeah. I mean, Bangemall's great, but you've got your Eastern Goldfields stuff.
Yep.
Give us an update on what's been happening there.
Yep. And so I guess we obviously spent a bit of time talking with Bangemall, but Eastern Goldfields is like the bread and butter, right? That's your solid WA gold story, greenstone belt. Get out there, drill holes, try and put together a deposit. We sort of swapped our focus a little bit over the last 6 months from Gidji to Glandore, and that was because Glandore was on the Salt Lake, and so the drilling that we wanted to do there needed a specialised diamond rig that was capable of drilling on the lake. And because of the way the market was over the last 18 months, so we just couldn't get that rig. The usual suspects in Kalgoorlie were busy. So we were hunting around trying to find a rig. So, we had these great targets that were there from the IPO, but we just couldn't test them. We actually ended up getting a rig from Mount Isa and bringing them over. A tiny little Chinese diamond rig. And we went out there, drilled the first hole, got some good VG in the first hole, meter at 15 grams or something. But the rig really struggled. So the first hole, they had to cut it short. We did another hole, we got, again, a meter at like 6 or 7 grams or so. Skinny intersections, but just showed that the gold was there. We then got a different rig with a bit more power and a bit more size. So we've done a program of about 7 holes there, and we're waiting on most of those assays. Assay times, turnaround times are still pretty bad. But basically what you've got at Glandore is you've got a layered mafic sequence. So same as like you see at the Golden Mile. And then you have this little granite that's intruded into that layered mafic sequence. And then on the edges of that granite and the mafic, there's gold. But then it's undergone some shearing. And then we think it's dextral shearing, and then there's a whole series of these northeast faults. And there's gold sort of on those faults in lower sort of levels. But where that fault hits that contact, then the gold drops out. And that's very similar to Majestic, which is to the south of us. You've got this granite with these northeast structures. That was discovered by Integra back in 2011. There's another one called Imperial, and there's another one called Trojan. So that's the sort of model there, that these northeast structures within the granite, where they hit the granite mafic contact, that's where we think the good stuff's going to be. It's a little bit frustrating at Glandhill because you have to diamond drill it. You can do air core drilling on the lake, but then you basically got to go straight to diamond drilling. You can't really take an RC rig out there because it's too heavy. So you've got to be pretty careful about your targeting and where you drill your drill holes, because obviously the cost of drilling jumps from the air core to diamond. So we sort of thought we'd pick the best areas to drill and then see what all those results come up with and see what happens there.
So most of the targets are on the lake itself?
They're on the lake, yeah. They're on the lake. It's not a bad lake as Salt Lake's go. We're pretty close to shore. We're in a little bit of a bay within the lake, so there's quite a lot of sort of vegetation and stuff on the lake. It's not just like a clay pan like you see in a lot of places. So you can actually, on a good day, you could drive a Hilux out on the lake, but on a wet day you wouldn't. So, but we had to get geared up with a bit of gear. We bought a little like side-by-side four-wheel drive thing to go on the lake, Yamaha thing. And we've got like a little quad bike as well. The drillers, the rigs, have these big wide tracks on them, so they can drive on the lake without getting bogged. So there's a little bit of sort of logistics and stuff that goes into that. But the target looks really good. There's a really big air core footprint over about 5 kilometres. So the trick is, finding out where that's coming from. And our best guess at the moment is it's this sort of edge of this granite where these structures are coming through. So
as we look at companies working and making discoveries, most of this seems to be coming from these lake systems now, not by virtue of the fact that they were special, it's by virtue of the fact that all the low-hanging fruits are done.
Yep.
And the bigger bodies are still hidden.
Yep.
And you've got the likes of Lefroy
Yep.
developing what they've got there.
Invincible at Goldfields, that's probably the biggest sort of recent lake discovery. Oh, Lake Rowe, the breaker stuff.
Yep, breaker.
Although that lake there's quite a bit smaller, a lot of that's on the land, but probably Invincible was the main sort of recent lake discovery.
Yeah. That's been around for a while too.
But you talk about low-hanging fruit, but I mean you look at Gidji. Gidji's between the super pit and Paddington, and it's on the highway. And it's not a lake. It's like how much low-hanging fruit do you want, sort of thing. So
I think a lot of people need to, understand that our game, there's a lot of skill, everything, but luck plays a big role.
And timing.
And
I
timing.
always talk about timing.
Yeah.
Like for example, I always talk about all the non-technical things that can lead to someone walking away from something. The non-technical stuff. It could be as stupid as someone getting a flat tyre before breakfast and not making it out to the outcrop to have a look at it. But timing, you've got to have the right projects at the right time in the market with the right bank balance and the right geo looking at it and the right gold price, Yeah,
I mean
all those things like.
Yeah, and it's always. And it's like this every time, every project. So when you see someone drops a project, that doesn't mean it's like killed off. It's one of those.
And the other thing I'll say is that if you pick up a Wamex historic report and you'll see that company X drilled these holes, they don't say about the corporate shenanigans that were going on about the time and how someone got sacked and this company was trying to take him over and blah, blah, blah. That's not in the report.
Yeah.
All you can see is, they drilled these holes, they got these good results. Why did they walk away from that?
Yeah.
No. You can't see all that backstory.
That's right.
In the report. So, you have to. My view is always like, okay, you look at the results, you satisfy yourself that the results are what they are. You make sure there's nothing after that that negates those results, and if nothing's changed, well, it is what it is, right? And you go test it. So,
Um, I want sort of talked about Whaleshark. Well, you sort of touched on it before. Obviously, the IOCG is the thing where I think WA is not known for chasing IOCGs and
no,
things like that.
no, I don't think we've actually
Um,
got one, have we?
well, I don't think we
Javier
have one.
they thought it was originally, but it's not. It's
Yeah,
not an IOCG.
because I think that's one of the things, like when we go talk about IOCG, we talk about Olympic Dam,
Yep,
and
and
things like
Mount
that.
Isa, like
Mount Isa,
Ernest
yeah.
Henry, Ernest Henry, Stara, Eloise up there, and then Carapatina, Prominent Hill, Olympic Dam down here. Yeah,
Because
yep.
that, if you did drill a hole and you did get those numbers, you open up floodgates
Oh
in that
yeah,
area.
yeah. So again, going back a bit, so the history behind that Onslow project was that, I started working for Western Mining in 1994, and it was not long after they'd made the Ernest Henry discovery in Queensland and then lost it through the court case. Okay, so Western Mining were really keen to go, okay, where can we find another one of these? And we had some really smart guys at Western Mining, really smart. One of the guys I worked with is a guy called James Johnson, who's now head of Geoscience Australia. Very, very smart guy. And so him and another guy, Tim Krask, and they said, oh, well, this Capricorn origin is about the right age. It looks like there's these granites here that are about the right age. It goes undercover here, so that's an opportunity that's potentially missed. So we pegged all this ground sort of in the basin, just near Onslow, and there were a whole variety of targets, granites and other things, and the one from a magnetic point of view, there was one that stood out as being a bit weird, and that was Whaleshark, because it wasn't so much a granite, it was this big folded banded iron formation. And so back then I think we had some detailed mags and ground mags and stuff, and we just popped a couple of scout diamond holes into it because we weren't sure of the depth of cover, and we got some gold in the biff, so that's pretty interesting. So it's Proterozoic banded iron formation rather than Archean. It's interpreted to be part of the Ashburton basin, where the Ashburton comes up, and in the Ashburton you've got Paulsons and Mount Olympus and all that. But the big Proterozoic banded iron formation hosted gold deposit is Homestake in South Dakota in the Black Hills. That's what the Homestake company was named after. Big folded banded iron formation, Proterozoic age. So I was like, okay, could be potential there for Homestake style deposit undercover. The cover's not deep; it's only like 100 metres, rather than 500 or 600 in a Olympic copper gold province, or 500 or 600 up in the Patterson. So it's all explorable. So pretty much nothing happened after Western Mining. From about sort of mid-90s, nothing happened. Fortescue had a bit of a look for channel iron deposits and stuff, and Spectrum had it for a little bit, but then they made that Penny West discovery. So again, this is a timing thing. You have a project, you have another project, you make a discovery, all the focus goes to here. Doesn't mean necessarily that that's a bad project, but just your resources go here. So that it got dropped. So I saw it in 2019, I picked it up. I thought, right, how are we going to explore this? I'd seen that Callum at Greatland had done MMI sampling over Javieron through 450 metres of cover. They got anomalies. And I know the Antipa guys had done the same thing up at their Calibre and Magna deposits and stuff. So I thought, we'll have a crack at this, at Whaleshark. Do a K by half a K sampling. And we got some really good anomalies. We got copper, and we got uranium, and we got moly and tungsten, all the things that you would sort of expect from an IOCG. And they're sort of sitting on the edge of this granite, which is intruding into this biff. So I thought, okay, that's pretty good. And we went back and did a second round, infilled it in a couple of areas. The anomalies got more consistent, coherent. So one of the things was, because of the depth of cover, because you're only talking in some places shallow as 20 metres, we thought, well, we can get an air core rig out there and we can just drill down to the top of the basement with the air core rig, and if it's anything less than 150 metres, then we can definitely get it with the air core rig, and then we can just see if there's any like dispersion at that top of the basement. And unfortunately for us, James Cook University, I think it is, they put together an atlas on Ernest Henry with basically every data set, mags, gravity, radiometrics, soil geochem, interface drilling, everything. So I'm like, oh, I've got this great model to work off. I know about the geology, I know about what it's going to look like in terms of magnetics and EM and all sorts of stuff. So we thought, okay, we'll go out, we'll go test these couple of targets with air core drilling. We'll get a look at the geology, and we'll get a look at the dispersion. If we find some mineralisation, great, but that's not really what we're looking for at the moment. We're just looking for like the smoke. And we drilled 250 by 250 metre grid, and the whole depths ranged from 20 metres to 150 without hitting basement. But we hit some granite, we hit sulphides. We thought we actually saw some chalcopyrite, but it probably wasn't. But we saw sulphides and stuff in the basement. So, and then when we got the numbers back, we were getting copper hits in granite up to almost 200 ppm copper in a granite, which is unusual. And then when you do that comparison with Ernest Henry, the things that you see at Ernest Henry, obviously copper you see, but you see uranium and you see tungsten and you see moly. We're seeing those same things.
Okay.
At Whaleshark. So now what we want to do is we sort of prove the concept, I guess. What we're going to do is we've got 3 of these bigger soil anomalies. We're thinking we want to go and do some ground geophysics, so probably EM, maybe IP, but probably EM. And then hopefully that'll give us then a bit better target to go back for with deeper drilling. So that'll be next year.
Okay. I mean, that's I'm glad you went through all that, because it's, I think Whaleshark Bangemall, when we first talked, I really liked for that. Gidji was simple. It's a simple business, right? You find enough ounces, you're cooking with gas,
Yep.
I enjoyed that dynamics that you guys have.
Well, I always say it's almost like a menu in a restaurant or something. I always like my food analogies, right? But you have your bread and butter stuff in the eastern Goldfields that you can go out and drill every day of the week. But then you have your high risk, high reward stuff that you might not work on all the time, but the target or the prize is much bigger. So the prize at Whaleshark is a Ernest Henry or a Javieron or something. It's a lot more riskier, but if it comes off, if we get one hole into some mineralisation at Whaleshark, like you say, that's a big deal for the company. If you get one hole into some mineralisation at Gidji, it's probably like incremental ounces. You need 50 holes into a mineralisation at Gidji, whereas you just need one good hole here to then go, yeah, there's something going on here.
You're looking for like 150 metre interval of let's say 0.5% copper.
Yeah, and some gold,
something like that.
Yeah.
That would light the place up.
Yeah, I mean, look what happened to Rudy Gomez, Carapatina, something like that. Just you're looking for a copper gold system. So you want some copper, you want some gold, you want some size to it. And then you're just like, wow, this could be really exciting. I mean, Greatland was a funny one because they were London listed. They didn't really get much coverage here, but that first discovery intersection had 4 or whatever it was at Greatland. That was just an amazing intersection beneath 400 metres of cover, mind you.
Yeah. I think a lot of people looked at that and go, is that really good or not good?
Yeah, but it was so close to these old Newcrest holes or whatever, or Newmont holes, I can't remember. It was so close to these other holes. You go, how is that possible right next to that? So. But that's what we do it for, right? You can make it a discovery of a system and these things are big. IOCG is like this, I guess the benchmark of what you want to find in terms of IOCG is 100 million tonnes at 1% copper, 1 gram gold. That's my sort of benchmark of a prominent hill or a Carrapateena. I think most of those they've grown now. They're lost 200 or 300 million tonnes, but that's sort of what you want to find. 100 million tonnes of 1% copper.
Oh, I mean, you could push the envelope and go like an Olympic dam.
Oh, what, 2 billion?
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think I'd be sitting here if I found one of them.
Yeah. Look, news flow. I know we talked a lot. Maybe you can just summarise what potentially guys should be.
We've been really busy this year. We've been really busy. We've been listed. We just had our sort of second anniversary of listing back in October. We're very proud to say that we've spent, at least 75% of our cash has gone in the ground, in drilling, and we had a really busy quarter in September. We drilled at 4 different projects within the quarter. We drilled at Gidji, Glandor, Randalls and Whaleshark. And at one point we had 3 rigs going at the same time, which is not bad when we've only got like a couple of geos. Right, so
I was doing the sums in my head, yeah.
And I think we spent $1 million on exploration in September quarter, and that gave us some good stuff from Whaleshark, Barara North, but Glandor was obviously really interesting, and we're still waiting on the assay results from that. So there's a bit of news flow still to come between now and the end of the year. It's mostly from Glandor. We're now we're going to have a bit of a sit down and plan what we can do with some of the other projects to add value pretty quickly. So things like the EM surveys at Whaleshark and the ground mag follow up and stuff at Bangemall. So I think it's been quite a busy year and a really busy quarter. So we're going to have a bit of a sit down and think about how we best use the sort of drilling next to progress things. Gidji's been a bit of a sort of quandary for us. How do we turn all these air core hits into some bedrock intersections? So we've been talking to a couple of people about how we can sort of focus that in a bit better without just sort of drilling holes and going broke. But we're excited about the projects. We're really excited about the project. We're excited about the opportunities, especially at Whaleshark. So we want to get out there and keep progressing these things. But also, when you IPO, you want a nice smorgasbord of projects because you don't know what's going to come off. So now 2 years on, we're at the point where we're going, probably that's not so great, that one's probably going to go. So don't be surprised if we try and do a couple of deals on a couple of our projects as well. So we focus on things where we think there's the best opportunity as well. So
makes perfect sense, I guess.
You can't do everything, right?
Yeah. Well, this is our industry. That's what we do. These things to move forward, right?
But I also say, people fall in love with projects too.
Yeah.
You got to be careful about falling in love with projects. You got to have some clear milestones about what you want to see at each stage of exploration. And if you don't meet that, then you need to be quite mercenary about it and go, okay, is it going forward or is it not? And the quickest way to go broke is to try and hold on to everything, and then there's a huge opportunity cost and a mine cost. I'm thinking about that. I should be thinking about that,
So how do you want the investor to see Miramar as you move forward? We're an evolving species, right?
Yeah.
We all know that.
Yeah.
So how do you want them to see you guys now as we move forward?
We've got some great projects, and I think I said at the beginning, our EV is like 4.5 million or something, which is, Gidji by itself is probably worth that. So that's a bit frustrating. I guess, there's always sort of 3 things that you need in exploration. You talk about people, projects and funding, and I probably even think it's more people, projects and funding. You got to have the right people. I've got 30 years experience. I've seen a lot of stuff. I don't know everything, and I admit when I don't know everything, but I think I know a bit. and we can recognise stuff, and I'm always happy to go talk to other people that can help us. I've been talking to some consultants in Kalgoorlie and people from Syro and stuff like that. So we want to find something. We've got some great projects and we want to find some stuff. We're trying to, I guess, balance that sort of bread and butter Goldfields story efficiently and get to a near-term sort of milestone with, say, something like Landor, with that great opportunity of the things like Whaleshark as well. And I said we are pretty disciplined. We're having discussions now about how do we simplify our story. So a couple of projects that probably haven't met a bill will go, and as I said, you've got to be disciplined to do that. So we recognise when things are not going to probably come up with the goods. But we're active. We're out there on the ground. We are trying to get new data. We are, executing programs. We're trying to spend our money wisely to progress things. And I guess that's all you can do as a shareholder. Exploration, as we know, is mostly unsuccessful. There's a few lucky ones where you actually make a discovery. So you got to have if your intent is to go out there and find stuff and try and create value, then that's part of the issue. There's a lot of companies that just want to sit on projects and talk about them. So we're actually out there doing the work and giving ourselves every opportunity, drilling holes, collecting geochem and geophysics data sets, and trying to get out there and find something.
Look, the greatest asset that we have is that the people who punt on us, invest in us, have short-term memories. So I think perfect way to end. Allan, you've been on with us before. You know that we give coffees away. Florence Drummond has come up with a new brand, Kick.
Right.
It's really a group of businesses who support the industry. So Florence Drummond is the founder of Indigenous Women in Mining Resources Australia.
Okay, all right.
So as a gift to our victims, a couple of packets of coffee
Great,
for you
thank
to
you.
take away and
Great. I love my
enjoy.
coffee.
And again, thank you for giving us your time. And look, Miramar's got a good story. So guys, call Allan, hassle him. Till the next time.
I don't know if hassle's the right word.
Yeah. But anyway, Allan, thank you, and hopefully we'll have another story down the road.
Great. No worries. Thanks a lot.
All right.